Everyone's deadly silent, waiting to go live.
Sorry, hang on. I think there's a few there's an issue.
I know, I start sitting up straight when she says we're going live after being slumped in the chair all day.
No, I'm good to go. It's live. Yeah, Sharon, it's fine.
Thank you. Can I welcome members, officers and members of the public viewing and joining proceedings online at today's meeting. I will ask Committee Clerk Gillian McCoy to check that members of the committee present virtually can see and hear us.
Councillor Connor, can you confirm that you can see and hear?
Yes, thanks, Jill.
Councillor Parsons, can you confirm that you can see and hear?
Thanks, Jill. I can see and hear fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. I'd also remind members, officers and members of the public to leave your microphones on mute during the meeting until you want to comment. In addition, can officers also turn their webcams off unless you are addressing the committee? Once anyone has spoken, please ensure to mute your microphone again so the audio remains clear. When I do bring you in, please unmute your mic and say your name and allow a brief pause while we ensure you are visible on screen. So moving to the item number 1, declarations of interest. Can I please invite members and officers present to declare any interest relating to the main item? That's clear, no one has an interest, thank you. Item number 2 is the Liverpool City Centre Connectivity Scheme, Lime Street, Central Ward. Can I refer you to pages 1 to 22 on your agenda and pages 1 to 4 on the supplementary agenda containing details of representations received in relation to the proposals? Can I please invite the officers who are going to address the committee on the proposals to now speak?
Hello, Oliver Brown. I work for Amy, and Fernando, who's been running with this one for the council, has asked me to speak on his behalf, but he couldn't attend today. So this committee met in December 2020 to discuss objections raised against the traffic regulation orders associated with the Lime Street element of the Liverpool City Centre Connectivity Scheme. 21 objections had been lodged against the scheme, although one had been removed following an amendment to the hours of loading bay. Of the remaining objections, 16 related to the proposals to implement a closure to through traffic between Elliot Street and St George's Place, and specifically the impact this would have on bus services across the city centre. The proposal was for only traffic in this area to be a single lane, which would access the St John's Centre car park. At the meeting in December, the committee elected to approve the scheme in the main, but defer a decision on the subject on the proposed closure, where subject to further design and modelling work to be undertaken with options to maintain bus access. One of the main objectives of the scheme was to enhance connectivity for pedestrians and active travellers and improve the vista outside Lime Street Station, with this being the first impression for city travellers of the city for tourists arriving by train. The existing carriageway outside the station has 4 lanes of traffic, and this is to be reduced to 1 lane to access the car park. So 5 options were put forward to maintain bus flow between St George's Place and Elliot Street. The first being buses could travel northbound only from Elliot Street to St George's Place with a bus lane. There would be the other car park access lane would be maintained. Then buses to travel north and southbound between Elliot Street and St George's Place. Buses to travel northbound from Elliot Street to St George's Place only, with the bus and car park access lanes separated. Buses to travel northbound and southbound, so both directions, but for the southbound journey, buses would be in a separate lane to avoid potential delays from the car park access. And the final option would be buses would travel southbound only, with car park access using the same lane. So traffic modelling was undertaken on each of the options considered, and based on the bus levels which were before the bus routing strategy Mersey Travel introduced in January this year. So it was using the old bus figures. And we also factored in the likelihood the taxis would be able to use any bus lane as they have done across the city previously, and factored in underlying levels of abuse which would be expected for through traffic. The modelling indicated that for all options, the junctions were predicted to operate well within the capacity, so that there wouldn't be a negative impact on the surrounding area due to the throughput of traffic, the surrounding traffic signals. Mersey Travel reviewed the proposals from a bus point of view and commented that of the options, only one was viable, and that was the option of buses travelling northbound from Elliot Street to St George's Place with a bus lane and a separate car park access lane. All the options then were reviewed by parking services at the City Council from an enforcement point of view, and they expressed concerns for all of the options. The options which operated with bus lanes could be enforced, but would require either an automatic number plate recognition system, which the council currently doesn't have, or would require a camera system which would involve council staff watching cameras real time and issuing penalty charge notices, and the council stated they didn't have the resource for it at the time. In the current proposal, the curb line for the car park access road was to be designed to be self-enforcing, kind of forcing cars to travel into the car park. That would have had a moving traffic regulation order associated with it. Outside London, that kind of restriction can't be enforced other than by the police. So the self-enforcing curb line was key to it. But with opening up other bus traffic as well, we couldn't introduce that curb line. So we would expect it to be abused more widely, allowing bus movement. Estimated cost implications associated with any of the options range from £437,000 to £839,500. The estimated cost of the only option Mersey Travel felt viable was £609,500. Since the December committee meeting, 3 letters were submitted regarding the proposals and the potential for bus operation through the area. The Liverpool big company wrote to express disappointment in the delay of the scheme, and that it would extend the disruption associated with the site works beyond the national lockdown, when the impact wouldn't have been as harshly felt. The big company also expressed concern over the proposal to run bus traffic between Elliot Street and St George's Place, as this would break the pedestrian connection between Lime Street and the St John's Centre. Representatives of the St John's Centre wrote separately with concerns about the delay, and they also highlighted the scheme had been under consultation since 2016, and the issue of bus access had not been in the design during that period. The letter suggested the principle of the scheme was to remove through traffic whilst maintaining access to the car park, and expressed concern that the suggested bus access would be departure from the agreed design. The letter concluded urging the committee to approve the previously agreed scheme and progress it on site as quickly as possible. Final letter was from the Holiday Inn Hotel on Lime Street. The letter again expresses disappointment at the delay in the scheme, calling for the work to be undertaken as soon as possible. The letter states the hotel management does not have a strong view on the bus access, but should it be committed, they felt allowing bus movement was against the vision of the original scheme. Given with the problems with enforcement, cost implications and comments from businesses, it's recommended the original proposal with no bus access between Elliot Street and St George's Place be taken forward. If bus access is required in the future, the option of allowing buses to travel northbound only could be further developed at that time should it be needed. It was also proposed in the original design to remove bus layover facilities from St John's Lane as part of the original scheme, but it's now proposed to maintain 2 layover spaces in this location. The recommendation for the committee would therefore be to approve the advertised TRO, but with the bus layover spaces on St John's Lane to remain.
Thanks, Salva. I'll bring in Councillor Liz Parsons. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've got a couple. Oliver, forgive me because I'm probably asking a really daft question here. On page 5, there's a section around trees that would need to be removed if we went for any of the other options. And the sentence says, due to the presence of statutory undertakers' equipment, relocating trees would be difficult. I don't know what that means. Forgive me, because I've instantly just, I don't know what undertakers' equipment is. So if you can clarify why that's an issue for me and why they can't be relocated in the other options, I'd appreciate it. Also, do you want me to ask, I've got 3 questions. Do you want me to ask them all?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, page 20, where you've got the financial implications and you break down the design fees, the additional work costs. You've got the delay for design and approvals. Why do they vary so much in terms of weeks? Can you explain some of that to me? And also on the I'm confused about the recommendation, because the recommendation on the front at 1.2 has about the loading bay and the bus stands. And then at the back on page 21, it also includes a statement that says the content of the report be noted and the potential introduction of option 3 with further coordination to take place to confirm whether the option is to be implemented in the future. So is that actually a recommendation, or is that just a statement that you've added on at the end? I'm just a bit confused.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, moving through them, the statutory undertakers' equipment is the likes of gas pipes, electric cables, water sewers, all the stuff that's underneath the highway and the pavement. So the drainage associated with the tree pit would require a foundation for the tree. Effectively, there would be an excavation. So in order to relocate any trees that have already been positioned, they would have to move statutory undertakers' equipment. So move the lay of the gas line, or move the sewer arrangement, move the electric cables. So the process for that is you would have to go to the company involved and ask them for a quote. And sometimes with depending on what the equipment is, that is quite a costly thing, but it's also the delay involved with that as well.
Sorry, just to clarify, the trees that are in the plans at the moment don't require any of that work to take place?
I think either that work has already been planned and approved, or the tree's been positioned to minimise the need for that. So we can get plans of where the cables are, but to try and maintain the number of trees that were already proposed, we would have to find new locations for those trees. So we'd have to go and see where there were gaps in the statutory undertakers' equipment underground.
So it is a possibility then. It's just that we don't know at this stage.
I know it would be very difficult to do. From conversations I've had with people who've looked at that sort of thing, it would be very difficult to find the space in that area for that sort of thing without having to divert the equipment of the statutory undertakers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bear with me while I open the report for delay. And for your final point, just taking them out of sequence, I think what's happened is the person who's generated the report has started with the original report for the last meeting. So the recommendation of the last meeting was to amend the TRO, approve the TRO, but with some changes to loading times. So that's been followed through. The recommendation at the end relates to this meeting alone. So the option 3 was the one option which Merseytravel found viable. So that was the recommendation of this meeting, that we would proceed with the scheme as originally designed, and if needed later on review the option 3, which was for northbound bus travel only between Elliot Street and St Johns Lane.
Okay, so that is part of the recommendation for this meeting. Okay, yes. Thank you.
I'll just go and look at this variation of the delay.
Liz, do you have any further questions?
No, thanks, Chair, but Oliver's just looking at, I'd asked a question about the delay for design and approval and why it was so different between the different options. So I think Oliver was just getting his papers up to answer that.
Chair, it's Roger Mann. I just wonder if it's worth clarifying again with Oliver what the recommendation today is, because my understanding is the recommendation today is not to proceed with option 3. But what Oliver's saying is that if we proceed today with the recommendation not to proceed with option 3, then option 3 is still an option in the future. Is that correct, Oliver?
Yes. So the recommendation is that we proceed with the original design, and then option 3 will be considered in the future. Should it be considered necessary at that time.
Oh, sorry. Now I'm doubly confused. So, is that written into the recommendation that option 3 can be considered as we move forward, or is that sentence on page 21 an error?
I don't think it's an error. I think it's maybe ambiguous. I don't know whether the suggestion is that at the moment the recommendation would be to proceed without changing the design to allow bus access. And I think that the intention of that line was to suggest that down the line, if anyone wanted to revisit and suggest putting bus access through, option 3 would be the one to consider, as the others have been deemed not viable by Merseytravel.
Okay, thank you.
And I think in terms of the delay relating to the differences in the delays, I think it's just to do with the complexity of the designs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oliver, I've only got one question at this time, and it's on page 18 of the report, which is the Merseytravel comments. The option 3 is the only viable option from the detail in the report, but on the comments it says has the potential for some northbound morning peak journeys, but this would mean additional vehicles circulating the city centre. So have you got more information around what the potential morning peak journeys could be?
I don't have that information with me, but I believe there's some representatives of Merseytravel here who would be able to answer that question.
Shane, Shane, are you going to speak on behalf of Merseytravel?
Yes, Chair, if that's agreeable. I'd like to call in Simon Ackers has the more details about what services. My name's Shane Fitzpatrick. I'm Director of Integrated Transport for the Combined Authority, and I'm currently part-time seconded into Liverpool City Council in the highways area. There's two aspects of it. It's there's an indication there that this is Merseytravel's view. Merseytravel coordinates the bus alliance perspective. So when we go to the operators about what routes are viable and what is not viable, when you see those section 8 of the report, although it says Merseytravel comments, yes, we have coordinated, but it's bus alliance comments at the end of the day. They'll go through the services, but when they looked at this as an option, and it is worth saying, perhaps slightly out of context for the report, this original work on this started 5 years ago. Our rerouting was planned 12 months ago. It was actually scheduled in every 3 months for the last 12 months before we've actually got to this proposition. So I just want to give the context for the rerouting. So that work, Simon will come on and just confirm that the routes, but what they've indicated is there's some services, if option 3 was taken up, that they would consider they would be able to move services because we've got some limiting capacity around Queen Square with some of these changes. So the ability for services going in with all the changes, city centre connectivity across the city, has some impact on this. If I can just ask Simon to come in and just answer that specific question about what services may go down that route. Simon?
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. So there is the potential that if Lime Street was open to northbound buses, then the 82D and 86D might possibly be reinstated. Where it's commented in the report about additional vehicles circulating the city, it's because of the route these would have to take through the city centre. And again, it's just trying to align things with what the city centre connectivity scheme and the bus rerouting scheme was aiming to implement. A number of other services that previously operated that way, some mitigation work was carried out before the rerouting was implemented, following the engagement exercise, where some of the Wavertree Road services were rerouted down London Road to maintain the link to Queen Square. So the services that have the potential, and again, it would all be in discussion with the operators, is that potential for that morning peak link to be reinstated?
Thanks, Simon. I may come back for further information on the bus rerouting strategy, but I know there's a number of councillors who have asked to speak. So can I just advise the committee, again, a number of people have requested to speak, and I will take them in the following order: Councillor Patrick Hurley, Councillor Lena Simic, Councillor Laura Robinson-Collins and Councillor Nick Small. So Patrick, would you like to address the committee, please?
Patrick, we can't hear you. Okay.
We'll bring you back in once you've got your sound. Councillor Leonard Simic.
Hello, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say I've been listening now to the proceedings here, and this is an issue that we've been having repeatedly as a member of Regeneration Committee, Select Committee. I've been part of these discussions since I joined, which was in 2019, and we have been returning to this problem that's been presented to us from our residents who wouldn't be able to be using the bus to connect the south and the north of the city over and over and over and over again. Each Regeneration Committee at some sense had this particular issue. So I would say that we really need to listen to our residents of Liverpool and to enable every possible way to have public transport. I understand that there is importance for active travel, such as pedestrians, and for the cyclers, and that's brilliant, and it's great to see these improvements. But as we are going through this next phase of the city in terms of climate emergency and in terms of changing the city into a sustainable city, we really must have the best possible integrated public transport. And that means that the buses should be allowed somehow to go through this corridor. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. And can I start by thanking yourself as the chair of this panel and Councillor Parsons for asking for this review. You know, I wasn't at the meeting in December, but well done for getting this review. As Len has said, it's been something that we've returned to many times in different fora and different committees, and it's good that it's being debated now. Probably it should have been debated quite a while ago, several years probably. But I'm really glad that it is now. So thank you for making sure that happened. Well done to you too. I've heard the reports from the officers on the written report. I have to say I've looked at that written report. It is a very confusing report. It's very hard to understand where we're going with it and what we're being asked to look at. And it's also come out at an extremely busy time. I hope that was by accident, not by design. It's been very difficult for us as members. We've all been extremely busy the last few days, as have officers, so it's been a difficult time. So I hope the report is going to be properly explained to us, and we are going to be able to make informed decisions, and the panel will be able to make informed decisions. As some people have already said, these discussions have gone on 4 years, and in that time, we've declared a climate emergency, as Lena has mentioned. And we've also been mandated to come up with a clean air plan, which may include a clean air zone. So I noticed some of the comments I think from Oliver at the beginning, referred to not having enforcement cameras and not having those facilities. Of course, if we've got a clean air zone in the city centre, we will be getting all those facilities because they'll be coming in with the clean air zone, and you'll be getting all that number plate recognition equipment and all that other stuff. Because if you're charging vehicles for according to their pollution levels, then that enforcement and that camera and that monitoring will be coming in with that. So as I say, we've declared a climate emergency and we're trying to clean up our air. So it means we have to have less cars in the city centre. And it means, as Len has said, we have to both promote active travel and also have a fully integrated 21st century public transport system. So although I'm bemused by the report before us, I want to end up, please, if we possibly can, with an option that means that buses can travel both north and south, the length of Lime Street, so that we do not preclude providing services going forward into the future. There's some confusion about whether Mersey travel or who's been consulted on the bus side. And I think that's, very regrettable. I'm also aware there's no comments here from the air quality team in this report. I think that is a major problem. We've got a DEFRA mandated clean air plan, as I've said. So where are the comments from the clean air team? We cannot be modelling this and precluding public transport from our city centre going forward. It just isn't a way of reducing carbon and improving our air quality. So I hope that we all fully understand what we're being offered here. And I hope any decision made today will leave forward the option of having buses going north and buses going south. And again, I want to thank Sharon and Liz for making sure this review was heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Nick?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm Nick Small. I'm a councillor representing Central Ward, which covers the city centre and some of the surrounding areas. I've been working on this with my ward colleagues, Christine Banks and Maria Toolin, for many, many years now. I'm working with many residents on this. I think the first thing that I'd want to say is I'm generally supportive of the Lime Street scheme. I think it's a good scheme in general. And what I want to do, and I said this in the meeting in December, is try to make this an even better scheme than it is at the moment by increasing the bus accessibility as part of this scheme rather than taking this away. I think it's absolutely crucial that we have north to south bus services, that we have more access both from the on the northbound side and also on the southbound side on this. I think we need to be looking at where we are today with this scheme, not where we were 5 years ago. I think some of the underlying principles of this scheme, we would not start from this position today. And the connectivity strategy, and there's many elements of it that I'm supportive of, but the underlying assumption with the Liverpool connectivity, city centre connectivity strategy, is that there will be an increase in private car travel, and that this is a good thing because it's about an increased population and it's about increased economic activity. Since we've declared the climate emergency, we cannot allow that thinking to continue in the policy that we have in the City Council. We've got to turn this on its head. We've got to have inclusive growth that doesn't mean an increase in private car travel and an increase in emissions and everything that comes from that. The second thing I want to speak of is I had a briefing yesterday with the planning team about the emerging St George Gateway scheme, a really, really good scheme, really progressive, which is going to look at righting a historic wrong of when we put the inner city, partly put an inner city motorway through the city centre and cut off North Liverpool from the rest of the from the rest of the city and from the city centre. We're still seeing the price of that today in terms of deprived communities on the north of the city centre, in the north of our city. And this scheme, I think, goes against what we're trying to do with the St George Gateway scheme and what we need to be doing to bring North Liverpool into the city centre and reconnect North Liverpool with the rest of the city. I want to give a few examples of where I think this is damaging for the existing plans will be damaging for my constituents. The first one is for residents living in the Bullring area. And Bullring area is a community, probably about 500 people between London Road and Brownlow Hill. And many of the residents who are older residents who are living on the Brownlow Hill side depend on the 79 service to get into the city centre. They won't be able to get to Queen Square unless these plans are changed. That means they'll have to go to the other side of their estate. They'll have to go to London Road, and many of them aren't going to be mobile enough to travel that far. So it reduces their access into the city centre. The second thing I want to mention is around the commercial district. We want to encourage, and we should be looking at encouraging, increased access by bus from all parts of the city, north and south, into those jobs in the commercial district. The commercial district is an absolutely crucial part of the employment in Liverpool City region, and we need to increase access to those jobs. At the moment, people travelling in from the east of the city and from the south of the city are less able to access those jobs by public transport because of what's being proposed on this, and that needs to change. The third thing I want to mention is around air quality. We've got some of the worst air quality in and around the city centre, probably anywhere in the country, and governments are forcing us to look at a clean air zone, absolutely rightly so. When you talk to constituents, when I talk to constituents, and the level of incidences of asthma and respiratory illness is absolutely shocking in and around the city centre, in communities like the Bullring, in communities like Marybone, and in other communities. And the underlying thing that we're trying to do on this, reducing bus services, making it more difficult for people to use public transport, is absolutely wrong from an air quality perspective and a public health perspective. The final thing that I think gets completely wrong on this is around integrated transport. What we should be looking at doing is integrating active travel, integrating public transport with each other, so that people can cycle more easily. They can get to Lime Street Station either walking or cycling, or getting there by bus. What these proposals do is make it more difficult for people to be able to use a bus to get to Lime Street and access those train services. It's not about joined up integrated bus services. The final point I'll make, the very final point I'll make on this, is we need to be looking to the future on this. We are headed, and whether the bus companies, the bus operators like it or not, we are rapidly heading towards a situation of re-regulated buses. I completely welcome that. The bus operators may not like it, but that's where things are headed. And that's what we need to be designing the infrastructure around. How do we future-proof this to make it as easy as possible for a re-regulated bus service to serve the needs of the citizens of this city? And I think the option 2 or option 4 gives us the best opportunity to do that. Option 5 restricts our ability to do that, and I think we will rue the day if we don't start future-proofing this now.
Thank you, Nick. Patrick?
You're not hearing me at all.
Can hear you now.
Can you? Oh, thank God for that. I don't know what's up with my Microsoft Teams at all, so apologies for the technical issues. Councillor Small has absolutely said everything I wanted to say, and really I don't want to keep the committee's time more than necessary, so I'm not going to go over old ground, other than to say and to reiterate one thing, and one thing above all. It's imperative that we keep the bus routes being able to go north and south across this area. I think residents won't understand and won't appreciate if, for whatever reason, we choose the option today, or you choose the option today, that precludes that possibility in the future. There could be a lot more I could say about air quality and about integrated transport and active travel, but both Lena and Nick have said everything that I needed to say. So yeah, my piece has been said, and I shall leave you with that. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Patrick. I know there's a number of people who have their hands up, so just bear with us one moment, please. Apologies, just making sure that I captured everybody who had their hands up. So I'll bring in Councillor Steve Mumby first.
You're on mute, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Can I firstly endorse the comments of other councillors about the vital importance of a north-south link for buses, and the arguments around air qualities and the need to, in a sense, rethink the whole scheme. What I briefly want to make 2 points. I think we need to end up with a scheme that allows north-south travel both ways for buses. I think the report before you does not allow you to make a decision. It's completely inadequate, frankly. It's confusing. And there's a more substantive procedural reason. And I'm sorry to raise this, but I think actually, for the two members of the committee's sake, as you may know, I resigned from the Mayor's Cabinet 3 years ago because of my disagreements with practices around 3 areas, one of which was highways. And the Calla report went into problems with highways in some depth. And I'm afraid these have been just dramatically highlighted by the proceedings of this committee. We've had a representative of a private company reporting to this committee by a contractor on behalf of the client side. For you to proceed on the basis of a report of an officer from Amy, the contractor, would be a total breach of everything Calla says. And for that reason alone, you could not proceed to agree a report. I actually find it quite shocking that that report was only published about a week or two ago and highways were already ignoring it. That is not acceptable, colleagues. And you must, just to protect yourselves, you cannot proceed on that basis. We have to have proper documents. You need highways officers here to present their submissions. And frankly, to get a proper report, what you need is highways, Mersey travel, the air quality team to all sit down together and come back with a better proposal. But you cannot proceed to a decision on this basis, or you put yourselves, in my view, and you put the council in jeopardy, because at one of the first occasions after the Calla report's been published will show we're completely ignoring the principles. And it is actually as simple as that. I'm sorry to be awkward, but it seems to me blindingly clear that.
Thanks, Steve. Hetty?
Thank you. I'd just like to reiterate what colleagues have said, particularly Councillor Robertson-Collins, Councillor Simic, Councillor Small and Councillor Hurley and others. I think it was made reference to in regards to at the beginning that this issue hadn't been raised before. It has. It has been raised for several years through the Regeneration Committee, and we've been asking the highways officers for years to look at this and to ensure that bus travel can ensure. Even before Mersey Travel had to complete its review, and with that in mind and with the urgency of that. So I think that was an unfair thing to say. It's imperative that we retain bus travel. We need a connected city, and we need a city that can work on the basis of that, with increased public transport, with better air quality, with a more accessible city. We shouldn't be working on the basis of just cars. I think this report is poor, and I think we really need to be looking at keeping those options open and keeping that made. It is late and it has come to this point, and I do understand that the officers are highlighting issues with redesign, but that is not to do with the councillors that are making representations at this committee. That is to do with the councillors that are making representations at this committee having been ignored for several years. Thank you.
Thank you, Hetty. James?
Thanks. So for me, the key aspect of this is about making sure that we don't disincentivise public transport in any way. If we want to improve air quality and if we want to tackle the climate crisis, then the way we do that is to encourage public transport. We don't do that by disincentivising it. If we take a course of action which has the potential to disincentivise the use of public transport, then that's going to have significant negative impacts on air quality across the whole city. It may well be the case that at this very small micro location you'd end up with fewer emissions, but if the overall net impact is a significant increase in emissions, then it's, you know, then we're only fooling ourselves, aren't we? So for me, any option which disincentivises the use of public transport is unviable. So for those reasons, that's the sort of option that I'd be looking at. I'd be looking at an option that incentivises public transport, not one that disincentivises it. Thank you.
Thank you, James. And Jane?
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Chair. A couple of bits. I agree with what all the other councillors have said. We haven't been listened to at the Regeneration Select Committee. We've pushed and pushed there. We've asked for a specific meeting where we can sit round the table with Mersey Travel, with the highways officers from the council, and look at this very, very carefully in the new context of the climate emergency. We never really had that. So the design needs to be re-looked at. And I know that sounds like, well, hang on a minute, we've been looking at this for years. But if you haven't been listened to for years, then we are where we are because of that. My understanding is that this meeting is about the traffic regulation order, not about choosing an option. So I would suggest that if possible, that we don't agree the traffic regulation order, because it blocks any chance we've got of having an integrated transport plan, as everybody has discussed before. And can we please again look at, as I've asked for repeatedly, how both Lord Nelson Street and Scalorn Street get linked in with this, because we have got an option here, if we think about it carefully enough, to be able to integrate green or hybrid, electric or hybrid Hackney cabs, being able to go linking up with the fact that we've got the major train station in the middle of the city there. I think the re-regulation of the bus network and the bus routes is really, and the bus service is really important, and that could change the whole face of this. And I think, Sharon, because I know that you're really concerned about the way that this all links together, so I think if we can stop the TRO, we've actually, and it sounds like we've only got it's only the TRO, but actually what it says is it stops everything in its tracks, and we need to keep those routes open. And I'd just like to say that on page 2, the objections I thought were really clear, to be honest with you, on all the bullet points. Objections to the current proposal, that was in the 28-day objection for the TRO, and they covered it all. I thought they were sound. So I'd really plead, given that I'm a North End councillor and lived there for a very long time now, we have to have north, south, south, north. We can't cut people off, and we have to encourage not only active transport but public transport in an integrated way. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jane. I'm now going to give the opportunity for officers present to respond to the comments that have been made. So can I bring in Oliver first, please?
Quite a lot to cover. Well, there's talk about we need to talk with Mersey Travel, and Mersey Travel have been consulted on these proposals. I see a lot of people shaking their heads, but I've spoken to people at Mersey Travel about these proposals. Mersey Travel are on this call, representatives of Mersey Travel are on this call, so they have been consulted on these proposals.
Why is the private contractor making a recommendation to the council now?
Steve, can you let Oliver respond?
Are you ignoring colour or?
Steve, that's not appropriate at this meeting. Thank you.
It's absolutely appropriate.
Jill, can you just mute everybody, please, and just give Oliver the opportunity to speak?
Yeah, that's done, Sharon. Chair.
I can't comment on things I've not been involved with in the past. I know council officers who know the background of the scheme involving what discussions haven't gone on. I know it's been presented at Cabinet. Again, I wasn't involved in that, but this has been approved by Cabinet in the past. I believe in January 2020 it went to Cabinet. I completely accept points about air quality issues being important and the need to improve public transport. The vision for this scheme was to improve the link outside Lime Street for pedestrians and cyclists, and kind of link the people arriving from the train station into the town, and that's what we've been attempting to do.
Thank you, Oliver. Can I ask if anyone from Mersey Travel has any comments? Jane, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pick up a few of the points that were raised in there. One of them is about integration of public transport. So bus, rail, ferries, tunnels and active travel comes under myself in terms of the combined authority. So for the rail, we have a 30-year strategy approved by the CA that's reviewed every 4 years, and the last time by the CA was in 2018. For the bus, we brought out a 15-year strategy in 2016, again approved by the CA and reviewed. The review should have took place 12 months ago, but is held back because of the legislation coming in about bus reform, and therefore it wouldn't be logical to do a review of a strategy until you complete understanding of what that legislation is. On active travel, short-term strategy for active travel came through the combined authority in 2017. The 10-year implementation plan for local cycle and walking was approved by the CA in 2019. And all of those are being progressed through transforming cities on a sub-regional basis as we take interventions forward. So I think I'm trying to raise, when people say, is there any framework for integration? There is framework for integration across the modes, and that's why I'm raising that point. I know it's not in the report, but there's comments being brought up. It doesn't mean you get down to the minutiae of particular areas, but I just want to set the scene where the framework is as we work as a CA with colleagues, obviously, in the authorities. So on the second issue is, if you go back to the city centre strategy, and I was around at that time, and it was driven by the city in that respect, but a lot of work, it's not just it's over 5 years, this is one component across a solution in the city. So if you move one component, it affects the rest, some of which has already been implemented. So what you see as the feedback in Section 8 from the operators is because they've done that rationalisation. We support public transport. We want the maximum use of bus and rail and active travel. We're actually in one place. But on this one, this is a final component of an element that's already in part been implemented, which makes this quite difficult on that side. So linking to active travel, one of the ambitions of this was to reduce the bus mileage through the city and therefore the air quality as part of that proposition. That's across the city, looking at all the routes. A lot of work's been done to look at the rerouting, north, south, east and west coming into the city to this proposition. There's been compromises that have to be made. There's no arguments about that. But I'm just saying that bigger picture. So I'm not defending, because the report is a Liverpool report. I'm inputting just the section in because you've asked quite rightly for the Mersey Travel and the Bus Alliance to give the view, and Section 8 replaces that. The comment I made about Mersey Travel, rather than being Mersey Travel comments, yes, we coordinated. I was just making it clear to members that is the Bus Alliance view. It's not. It was just a clarification point there, in case that it's important, because they can, at the moment, they control the buses. Part of the work under myself is the bus reform business case. So it reports through to me. I actually chair the steering group for bus reform. So that bus reform work will go on. If we do move to that decision, and members will make that decision at the right time. If they do go to that decision, to roll it out will take about 4 or 5 years when we get through to a final business case. And we're just starting the completion of the outline business case, which will probably take about 15 months. So I just want to give you an idea of timelines, whatever decision we arrive at. We've got to sign up to a short-term recovery plan through government now to move from what they call CBBS funding, which is the short-term funding propping the bus sector up and the rail sector at the moment through the public sector. So we've got to come up with a short-term plan for 18 months and still work on that long-term plan of whatever decision is made by the mayor and leaders as to the control of the bus network going forward. So I've just said, just putting in realistic timelines to that. It's very hard to stitch all these aspects together. But I think what I'm trying to get on this report is, although the report at times may not be as clear as it should be, what you've got is a live contract out there that's a component of a much bigger project, of which this is one element of it. And some of those elements are already in place on that side, and it's live. So no decision as it is today, and this isn't a criticism about anybody putting it, means it's costing money for Liverpool because you've got a live contract. And any change here is a variation to the contract. That's why some of those costs are quite high, because some of them are penalty costs in effect, prolongation and extension of contracts. So that's not blaming anybody. I'm not trying to move it. I'm just saying what the challenges are for the officers who are trying to put that together as a city report. So I just wanted to make those comments, Sharon, on based on what I've heard.
Thank you, Shane. Liz, have you got any further comments or questions?
No, thank you, Chair, but I did note that Councillor Amelia wanted to speak. I think you missed a hand up.
Apologies. Councillor Amelia, would you like to come in?
Yeah, it's okay, Sharon, don't worry about it. To be honest, I think all the other councillors have managed to convey what my feelings and views are as well. I think a lot of us are in agreement that we need to prioritise public transport, especially with, having declared a climate emergency. And if we're going to get to zero carbon, we need to focus on that and not ignore it at the expense of cars and other things. So I'm not going to carry on into too much more detail because I think everyone's managed to cover it pretty well.
Thank you. And sorry for missing your hand being up as well, Lindsay. I've only got one question, and it's based on obviously conversations and comments that have been made. And I don't know, Simon, if you're best placed for this, but just in terms of that connectivity for north and south, coming through to the city centre, coming into the city centre and through the city centre, there's been quite a number of comments that the scheme will be detrimental to that connectivity. So obviously, in terms of future routes or further bus strategy routes, is there any consideration from Mersey Travel, from the Bus Alliance, to consider using the Strand or alternative routes?
Yeah, I think what we said when we implemented the rerouting from the 24th of January was that it will be reviewed, same way that we review all services and all network changes that happen. Obviously, at the moment, the Strand is not sure what kind of level it will be, but it's in the middle of its work, but obviously it's very congested down there. There's a lot of ongoing works down there. And at the moment, rerouting buses along there, such as the 82Ds or the 86Ds, to serve the business district in a different way isn't practical just because of the congestion that is down there. But it's certainly something that once the Strand works are completed and we understand how the Strand functions with its new layout and with the new signals, that could be considered as to, is that an option for kind of reinstating some of that lost connectivity that was there. Just touching on the point that Shane made about that wider picture, something that just needs to be considered when we talk about sort of the potential for north-south routes through Lime Street, it's the impact on Queen Square and the capacity, the operating capacity there, because with all the other bus stops being removed, effectively between the river and Queen Square, almost all the passengers for those services now have to go to Queen Square, so there's a big impact on how that bus station operates. So that's just a factor that would have to be considered in the future if it was to consider north-south routes.
Thank you, Simon. So just for my clarity then, currently, because the rerouting strategy commenced in January, is there any, and obviously works are ongoing in Lime Street, so currently there's no bus services running through Lime Street currently, and whilst work is being carried out on the Strands, there's a potential that that could be a route for future bus services.
Yeah, there's nothing that can operate through now, and once those works on the Strand are completed, it's something that can be considered.
Thank you. I don't have any further comments or questions. Liz, I'll leave if you don't have anything further.
Can I just ask, Chair, because obviously you've just spoken about the potential for the Strand to be considered and that services could be adapted to take the Strand into the case, into case for that connectivity. But if the case is that the rerouting strategy can be adapted to take the Strand into account, can it not be adapted to take this into account then? I'm a bit confused about why it's final for one thing, but it's not final for another. Is there... I'm just... the more I hear, the more confused I get, to be honest.
Simon, do you want to come back on that point, or?
Yeah, I think we would consider if the Lime Street plans were, if the scheme was completed as in the original plans, where there's a complete severance for through traffic, then consideration could be given once the works on the Strand have been completed for extending those morning peak journeys around to serve the business district to effectively replace what that morning peak link that has been lost because services can't travel across Lime Street.
For clarity, the point that I was trying to, well, the question that I was asking is, obviously the Lime Street scheme would sever any access for public transport, but are there any other routes through the city centre that will enable that north and south connectivity? And Simon, what you're saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is there is other potential routes that will be looked at in the future.
Yeah, in the future, if the plans went ahead as the original proposal, where no through traffic, then there is other options that can be reviewed once the works on the Strand have been completed.
Thank you. We've now come to the end of the meeting. Jane, would you like to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one on, because we're looking at the impact of the TRO. My concern is, again, as I said previously, about the way that Hackney cabs are able to come in and out of Lime Street. And even though we've been raising this in Regeneration Select for a very long time, that has never been taken on board. So you're looking at the you're looking at Lord Nelson Street, where there's a Hackney rank there, but it's linked up with the hotel by the sounds of it, or the Everyman, not the Everyman, the anyway, the theatre there, or and then you come right round the back, and once you come down Skillorn Street, you will only be able to go left because there'll be the blockage there. So actually integrating the whole thing and having a TRO in the middle of it is going to completely screw that up. It's bad enough now. It's really bad now. And it will get much, much worse once you've got that closure with the TRO. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Sharon, I've had my hand up. It's Councillor Doyle, but I don't think you're able to see it.
I do apologise, Sarah.
Don't worry, because I could see on other people's screens that they couldn't see hands either, so don't worry. I think all the councillor colleagues' comments are what I was going to say. I just wanted to pick up in terms of COVID recovery And I think the pandemic has thrown, it's shone a light on the problem of transport links. And recovery cannot simply be an attempt to rebuild what has gone before. And I think councils will play a pivotal role in ensuring recovery is properly citywide. And I think transport should be at the heart of this. If you think about it, transport is fundamental to connecting people to businesses, to services, whether it's connecting our residents to jobs, education, leisure, communities facilities, tourists that come into the city, to vast open green spaces and to new sports stadiums. And they're transport connections associated with almost everything we do. And getting more people into buses and public transport, not only, as colleagues have said, reduce our carbon emissions, it will improve mental health, because every journey to a bus stop with a walk. And I think we need to ensure that our communities that have been really hit hard by COVID, it's an enjoyable experience coming into the city centre. Our city centre needs that. Our residents need that. Thank you.
Thank you. And apologies. No, I don't know, for some reason, hands aren't showing fully on the list. So apologies for not picking up that you wanted to speak.
No problem.
Thank you for your contribution. I'm just going to obviously pause just for a moment and request that, Jill, if you can put us into a private session just to speak to Roger over some legal advice, please.
I'm going to have to pause the live stream then, and everyone will have to rejoin the meeting. I'm going to pause the live stream, and if people can start rejoining them, how long would you say, Sharon?
5 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to pause the live stream, and if everyone could leave and then rejoin or come back into the lobby in 5 minutes, and we'll start the meeting again. Just bear with me while I pause.
Thank you, everybody.
Sharon?
5 minutes.
Okay, I'm
please.
going to pause the live stream and if everyone could leave and then rejoin or come back into. I'm going to pause the live stream and if people can see Sharon.
5 minutes.
Okay, I'm
please.
going to pause the live stream and if everyone could leave and then rejoin or come back into the lobby in 5 minutes and we'll start the meeting again. Just bear with me while I pause.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Chair, we're back up.
Thank you, Jill. To say thank you again to everyone who's watched the proceedings. I can confirm that the committee at this moment has not reached a final decision for the proposal and has requested through the committee clerk that another meeting is rescheduled for the 15th of April and request further information from both Mersey Travel and Highways in regards to the scheme. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. That's brilliant.
That it?
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Is it 5 o'clock again, Sharon, on the 15th?
Bye.
5 o'clock on the 15th. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much for that.
Bye,
then.
everybody.
Gone. You gone?
Yeah,
Yes.
does.
Thanks, Jill. Sorry about that. I thought you were going to say the live stream's over.